Hello and welcome to CEN 4801. In this session, we will look at one of the common integrated systems used by many companies, which is called Enterprise Resource Planning System or ERP system. This integrated system evolved from material requirements planning to material resource planning to ERP, and within that there was many additional components that was added, or features were added, and we are going to look at that too. Let's start with the material requirement planning, which is a production planning, scheduling, and inventory control system used to manage manufacturing processes. The material requirement planning is a system for calculating the materials and components needed to manufacture a product, and it consists of three primary steps. Taking inventory of the materials and components on hand, identifying which additional ones are needed, and then scheduling their production or purchase. The bill of material for the product will be provided, including the lead time for each item. The inventory data will be checked for available items. If not available, it will be purchased. Once all items available, the production schedule will be created. The MRP will assist in generating reports to monitor production, order fulfillment, acquisition reports, and other reports as needed. MRP facilitates replanning when changes occur, since many changes can create chaos in the system. The MRP system provides time boundaries that will allow efficient replanning. Making fast links of each item to its parent allows effective analysis of those changes. But unfortunately, this system had limitation. It does not do detailed scheduling, but it plans only. Work best in product-focused, repetitive environment, but does not work as well in process-focused environment or other manufacturing environments. Requires fixed lead time and infinite size time periods or time intervals used in planning, scheduling, and reporting. For example, we call it like time buckets, which is like a weekly time bucket break. So those intervals or those periods are required by the system. The MRP was extended to MRP2, which includes the integration of additional data such as employees and financial needs. The closed loop added an information feedback feature that enables plans to be continuously checked and adjusted, and capacity planning, which is another closed loop for the MRP that added another feature that will also be addressed in the few slides. So we'll talk about each one of them separately in the next few slides. In MRP2, which is the requirement data or material requirements planning 2, the requirement data can be enriched by other resources, generally called the MRP2, or instead of material requirement planning 2, we call it material resource planning. The outputs can include scrap, packaging, waste, effluent, carbon emissions, any other reports that will be needed. Requirements data used by purchasing, production, scheduling, capacity planning, inventory, warehouse management. The data can be analyzed and used to understand the requirements for each one of these areas. This matrix shows an example of a material resource planning showing the resources needed for each item. And as you can see here, we have the labor, the machine, the scrap, and the payables. So all this information will be provided within the material resource planning system. In the closed loop system, which is depicted in this graph, and this is the architecture for it, it provides a feedback that will assist in adjusting the resource planning. So what we did here, we just included a loop or a feedback that will provide me some information if this one being already met or not. If not, then go back and redo the previous step and so on. So it's basically checking and adjusting as needed. The capacity planning in closed loop in the MRP utilizes feedback about workload from each work center, may make use of resource requirements profiles, such as loading reports. Work can be moved between work centers to smooth the load, which does not add capacity, but rather seeks effective using of existing capacity. And we'll talk about that in a minute. So when we say smooth, we need to know how can we smooth. The smoothing tactics that can be used, we have the overlapping, the operation splitting, or order or lot splitting. In the overlapping tactic, it sends parts of the work to to following operations before the entire lot is complete, which reduces lead time. In the operation splitting, this tactic sends the lot to two different machines for the same operation. Of course, it provides shorter throughput time but increased setup cost, because you have to set up the two machines or the two lines to do the same thing. The order or lot splitting is breaking up the order into smaller lots and running parts earlier or later in the schedule on the same machine. This is an example of developing a capacity plan for work cell at Wiz Products. There are 12 hours available each day. Each order requires 1 hour. And let's look at this company, this example, and see what they have. In day 1, the order is 10. Day 2, the order is 14. Day 3, 13. Day 4, 10. And day 5, 14. Again, notice that they work 12 hours. So their availability 12 hours, and each order requires 1 hour. So basically we can do 12 orders a day. If we look at the table, you can see that this one is less than 12. This is more than 12, more than 12, less, and this is more. So 2, 3, and 5 exceeds the daily capacity. So how can we handle this situation? And again, this is what we call the order splitting, which is a tactic that has been implemented here to split orders and move them to other days to split or balance the capacity and utilization of the existing capacity. The 10 days, the 14, we took 2 from the 14 and split that to day 1. So split order, move 2 units to day 1, and by doing this now we have 12 and 12. For the third day, we split and we move to the fourth day. So we can start splitting and moving on until we get 2 every day. So actually for this one we split order, move 1 unit to day number 6, or request overtime for this one if we have only 5 days. For this one we took from the 14-2 and we moved it back to day 4. So we can split it in a way that will have 12, 12, 12, 12, or we can request overtime for this one since we don't have day 6, and then just do it in the overtime. And that will be the order splitting solution for this case. We can also look at the graph, which shows the implementation of the tactic and how did we balance the order. So the regular capacity is 12. This is the regular capacity of the line. We can see that those are underutilized, those are overutilized, so we can just split and take those parts. This one will fit here, this one will fit here. We have only this one, and this one can be dealt with either day 6 again or by doing overtime. The resource requirement planning or resource planning in service industry addresses items that are directly related to demand in that service. These can be treated as dependent demand services or items such as restaurants, hospitals, hotels. The service item will be required when a demand is available. For example, a patient walks in the hospital, which creates a demand for a resource or resources. That planning will be based on that demand or that patient. This is an example of a meal in a restaurant that has been ordered by a customer. So that's a demand. And the customer created that demand. Resources will be planned accordingly to fulfill that demand. At that point, we can create what we call a bill of materials that can be developed as part of the resource planning process, and will identify what kind of material will be needed for that demand. If the requirements are the resources available, then it can be done. Otherwise, we have to acquire some of the resources to make sure that we can fulfill the demand or the order. Another one that came or added a feature was the distribution resource planning, which is a method used in the business administration for planning orders within a supply chain. So once we started dealing with lots of suppliers, now we have a chain of suppliers, and we need to know how to distribute the information and the material. And that's how they came with the distribution resource planning. It makes the delivery of goods more efficient by determining which goods in what quantities and at what location are required to meet anticipated demand. The goal is to minimize shortages and reduces the cost of ordering, transporting, and holding goods through planned replenishments. The enterprise resource planning is business process management software that allows an organization to use a system of integrated applications to manage the business and automate many back office functions related to technology, services, and human resources. So the idea is to integrate all these parts together, is to put all these components together to give me a system that will address all these areas together. At the beginning, we were dealing with material, then we needed financial, we needed to deal with customers and humans, we needed to deal with suppliers. So we started adding all these components together, and at a certain point, we cannot keep them standalone, so we have to put them together as one integrated system. So the ERP is an extension of the MRP system that will tie in everybody together, including customers from one side and suppliers from the other side. It allows automation and integration of many business processes. It shares the common databases and business practices, and it produces information in real time. The ERP coordinates business from supplier evaluation all the way to customer invoicing. The ERP system includes the basic MRP to begin with, that was dealing with the material planning and production scheduling, to finance, to human resources, to supply chain management, to customer relationship management, to sustainability, to sustain that connection between those components and the relationship between the partners. This figure shows the ERP system architecture. This is what we were talking about before, where you draw architecture to understand how the system works. And as you can see, we have the main components: the customer component, the supply chain component, the finance component, and the MRP. And within that, we have sub-component for each one of them. So the ERP system extends its relation to the customer and manages the relationship through the customer relationship management system. So we have now a subsystem from the main system, the ERP system, that is called customer relationship management system. And in that, we deal with the taking the orders, we deal with shipping and distributing the orders, and then invoicing the customer. This shows the architecture of the MRP system, which includes the master production schedule. As we said before, this is the old system that was built before, but what we did, we just added features and tools and techniques just to assist in the flow of material, the flow of information, and the flow of transactions. So now we have the master production schedule, we have the inventory management bill of material, we have work orders, and we have purchasing and lead time, and routings and lead time in the MRP system. All that will be connected to the other components to make sure that the flow of the three components, the material, the transactions, and the information, will be as efficient as possible. From the other side of the MRP system, the ERP extends to suppliers and supplier of suppliers. That add the supply chain management component to the integrated system. It includes vendor selection, vendor communications, and other related supplier issues. Adding the customer from one side and the supplier from the other side created the need to manage the transactions through adding the finance and accounting component. This component contains the accounts receivable, general ledger, accounts payable, and payroll sub-components that will manage all the transactions all the way from customer to supplier and supplier of supplier through the supply chain. ERP systems have the potential to reduce transaction cost, increase the speed and accuracy of information. It facilitates a strategic emphasis on just-in-time systems and supply chain integration. The idea of just-in-time is to get the item to the customer when they need it, exactly in time, and not after a while. It can be expensive and time-consuming to install, but it will pay off, and the results could be realized in a few years. And when we say a few years for return on investment, that will be great for big companies when doing the implementation. One of the well-known ERP system that is being used by many companies is called SAP. This figure is shows the SAP modules, different modules within SAP, and we can see that we have the financial component, we have the human resource component, we have the customer component, we have the supplier component, and we have the MRP or MRP system for production and scheduling. Since MRP was used in service, MRP was extended to be used in service, or ERP was extended to be used in service. So ERP systems have been developed for healthcare, government, retail stores, hotels, and financial services. Also called the efficient consumer response systems. The objective is to tie sales to buying, inventory, logistics, and production for those services. So whether we are talking about manufacturing or service industry, in both we can use ERP system. And one of the ERP system that's been used is in education, as we have in the project. That was one of the examples and one of the things that you need to do as an assignment. So we are talking about an educational system, and it is an ERP system for service industry. That will be all for this session. If you have any question, you can email, call, Skype, or come in person, and I will be more than glad to address your concerns. Have a great day.